Okay, thank you. And just for the recording, we're on to the October 8th minutes. We did do the Pledge of Allegiance at the start of the meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the October 8th minutes? And if so, do we have a motion?
So
Thank you, Sue.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any discussion? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda is the personnel action items. Liz, is there anything of significance you'd like to report on this?
Custodians are back on there barely, but they are.
Yeah.
We're still making good progress on that front. We just had a little back step. Not on the personnel activity report, but associated with the personnel activity report is just reminding friends and community members that we definitely need substitute teachers.
Okay. Thank you.
What do you want to do with public comment?
Oh my, skip that, didn't we? Oh, we'll come back to it right after that. Sorry, I skipped public comment, Jarrett. We'll get back to you. New format here. I'm still getting used to it.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
Okay, so any questions, comments about the personal action item? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion? Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Jen. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And now we'll come back to public comment, which I totally skipped over.
I got one question. Can you get public comment on the personnel action item? Since it's an action item? That's unusual, but I'd like to say something about it if I could, even though you already voted.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay. Is this working?
Yeah, just hit the silver button, turn it red.
Okay, yeah. But it's working like always?
Yep.
My name's Jared Stump and I'm a teacher here in the district. And I would just like to say with the personnel action item, I'm not sure if there's any teachers up there that resigned because they couldn't find housing in the district, but I think it's really important that we keep bringing that issue up. I know that our central administration is working on the issue and they're trying to, do everything they can, but there are small things that can be done immediately instead of, having to wait, like the house that's a block away from where we're sitting right now. So I'm not so sure if that even applies to it, but I hate to see any resignations early in the year because I know that housing can be a really struggling thing for these new teachers and that can lead to more of that. So I just want to encourage the board and the central administration to keep going after that because I think it's a good goal to help out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jarrett. Thank you, Jarrett. And it is on our radar. It is something we are keeping in the back of our minds and know how important that is. So, public comments for items not on the agenda. At this time, the board will allow comment on public matters that are not on the main agenda. Members of the audience are encouraged to briefly address the trustees on issues that is not on the agenda. The chair of the board will seek comment from the audience on significant items as they occur. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues or you will be ruled out of order. Please note that you'll be given 3 minutes. Anyone for public comment? Step on up, state your name, please.
I'll see if I can do it in 3.
Okay.
My name is Cody and I teach at Glacier High School. I want to speak to the possible upcoming levy. As we consider the allocation of resources in our upcoming levy proposal, I urge the board to prioritize teacher pay over other areas such as security or technology, or even out of a general fund. While all aspects of the school system are important, the foundation of a successful educational experience rests on the quality and stability of our teaching staff. Our current negotiations for our CBA are a perfect example of how important adequate teacher pay is. Here are a few reasons why running a levy for teacher pay is wise counsel. 1, attracting and retaining high-quality educators. Competitive salaries are crucial in attracting and retaining top talent. In today's competitive job market, teachers are more likely to seek employment in districts that offer better compensation, especially given the increasing demands placed on educators. By offering competitive pay, we ensure our students have access to skilled, passionate educators who are committed to their success. Another reason would be an impact on student achievement. Numerous studies show that the most significant in-school factor for student success is the quality of the teacher. Schools that invest in their teachers see better student outcomes, including higher test scores, improved graduation rates, and increased college readiness. When we invest in teacher salaries, we invest directly in our students' futures. Another reason, teacher morale and job satisfaction. Teachers are the backbone of our school system, yet many are feeling overworked and underappreciated. Fair compensation acknowledges their hard work and dedication, boosting morale and giving stability to the profession. Finally, I would like to say that community awareness would be a big part as well. It is my belief that our community has a difficult time understanding the true financial stress that we are experiencing here in our district. When we ask for tech, safety, or even just general fund levying, our community has a difficult time understanding how woeful our financial reality is. Tech can be blown off as, oh, they just need a couple more computers or something going on over there. You can also have, when you have safety levies, they can say, you know what, don't we have cops in each of our buildings? But when we run a levy on teachers, I think it will be slightly more difficult for our community to deny the importance of adequately paid educators. I would also like to stress the importance for asking for the full amount of leviable funds. I understand the challenges of requesting for this level of funding. I truly do. But we are in very unstable ground right now in District 5, and I believe that it sends a message to our teachers, particularly our new teachers who right now are in fear of losing their jobs. Though for some of them, it may already be too late. It also sends a message to the teachers who might be on the chopping block within the next couple of years. The message it sends is that despite the fears born from another levy failing, because we asked for too much, we did everything we could to support them. We asked for what they deserved. By am I out of time?
No, you're good.
Good. By focusing this levy on teacher pay, we signal to our community that we value education at its core. The people who shape our students' lives every day, strong, well-compensated teachers will elevate the quality of education in our district, providing a lasting impact that outweighs any short-term gains from increased spending on security or technology alone. Thank you for your consideration of this critical issue. I urge the board to focus on the levy that what matters most, our teachers and the students that they serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I thought it was 3 minutes, man. There's a timer last time I was up there.
You did good.
No, you did good.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Jared Stump, and I work here in the district as a teacher at Glacier High School. Today, I'd like to address the optics of the district. Optics are a tricky thing. They really depend on the perspective of the observer. For instance, when you're passing someone on the highway, as you're traveling faster than they are to you, it kind of seems like they're moving backwards, while to them, you're moving forwards. It's all about perspective. It's very similar with the central administration and the general public today, I believe. A good example is the hiring of a new administrative staff over the past few years, as teaching jobs have been cut, mostly by attrition. The most recent being the hiring of a communications director. The central administrators were very, very careful to explain that not all of the position salary is coming from the general fund. To the central administration, the optics are good because they know they are using other funds that for whatever reason, can't be used for salaries to pay for this position. The teachers and the general public, the optics are really bad because our central administration is hiring administrators while firing teachers, while also giving budget presentations that show multi-million-dollar projected budget shortfalls. So it just doesn't square real well, with the general public. Another good example is last year's budget shortfall. In October 2023, the school board agreed to take around $600,000 out of the interlocal agreement fund to cover last year's projected 600,000 budget shortfall. I believe it was 253,000 and 353,000, something in that range. At the end of the year, the district didn't actually take the money from the interlocal because last year's budget projections that were prepared by our current budget director were either incorrect or they found some other funds to cover the projected shortfall, because they're just projections. It's hard to say, what happened. So while the central administration is projecting optics of budget shortfalls, the teachers and general public have been seeing them grow their savings over the years. So again, it's a problem with perspectives. How did the IAF, the Interlocal Agreement Fund, get that big? I believe it's like $5.8 million because the district was smart, I believe, with the ESSER funds they got from the federal government during COVID. And they were able to use the ESSER funds in replacement of the general budget funds that they normally would be spending, allowing them to save quite a bit of money over those years. So in my opinion, that is mostly COVID money. And what is the COVID money going to be spent on? A new facility? A new program? You know who earned that COVID money for the district? The teachers. The teachers in this district own it. They put their life on the line for you to keep the schools open. We were the only AA school district in the state to stay open year round during 2020, 2021. They wore masks for all of you and for this district. They wore masks during the day. They wore masks at staff meetings. And they really put, everything out there to make this all work. So I think it's the district's turn and the central administration's turn to reward those teachers for that hard work. And I urge you to do so. You guys have a great day. I appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, moving on to the facilities administrative assistant. Matt?
Yeah, thanks for the intro to that. Good timing. So I sent you a long-winded history on this position. This is kind of a unique situation. I'll give a really brief overview and then take some discussion and questions about it. So I don't know what details we want to take a look at tonight, but in a nutshell, this position historically has existed in two places. So we had the responsibilities of this particular position covered by a person that was working both for transportation and for maintenance. And the other half of the position was being covered by our custodian supervisor, our previous custodian supervisor. In recent history, the position was coded out of transportation, and so it was no longer available for the maintenance side. And so the half of the maintenance side that was responsible for facilities management was reduced. And the new custodian supervisor has expanded the scope of his work and no longer does any of the facilities oversight and scheduling. So we are currently without anybody doing any facilities management or scheduling, which brings us to the history of we have a half-time FTE historically. Adding back the other half-time FTE or adding a half-time FTE allows us to start collecting revenue for the use of our facilities. We've done some pretty extensive review of our elementary facilities. What I'm recommending is that this position start with elementary facilities and then take on middle school facilities and eventually look at working with the high schools on the high school facilities. There are lots of issues when you talk about renting facilities. We have to make sure that we have insurance and liability that's appropriate. If we're collecting fees that are appropriate for the organizations that's using our facilities. And then there's just the management of scheduling. So it's the scheduling of when the doors open, who has the key card to open the doors, but it's also the scheduling to make sure that those spaces are cleaned before our staff come back and use those facilities. None of that is currently happening. We are, I think, compromising the safety of our facilities by the system where we currently have somebody using our facilities. We're not collecting fees because we don't have a system for managing that. And our key card system, we don't use a key card because we don't have anybody to check key cards out and work with individual renters. So we just open doors at a certain time. What we found is that on numerous occasions, doors have been opened when somebody using our facility has canceled the practice, and then other people are entering into our facilities just because the doors are simply open. Also, the amount of use for our facilities means that our doors are open on a pretty regular basis without a gatekeeper for that process. So there's an obvious need for what we're proposing here. I think the other option would be us considering only using our facilities for our district purposes, which would be a pretty unwelcome change for our community that's grown pretty accustomed to using our facilities. But our current structure is not working, and we don't have the capacity with our current staffing to manage our facilities.
Matt, before we take questions, can you talk a little bit about, I know you and I have had this discussion of, we have several sports teams at KMS and even at the high schools that have a tendency to sometimes use our elementary schools. Can you just talk about scheduling and how that will work with our extracurricular activities and then the outside use?
Yeah, so historically, our high schools have used our elementary schools for some of their practices, and that's all scheduled internally, and we give priorities to our teams using our facilities. Recently, we started doing that same thing with our middle school. So our middle school had historically operated just as using their own facilities, but as their numbers have increased and their numbers of participants have increased, the demands for practice time have increased, and we've seen them have morning practices for volleyball and basketball and things like that. We've encouraged them to, instead of having those morning practices or really late practices, to schedule those at our elementary schools. So that does cut into the availability for the community use of our facilities, but also I think is appropriate use of prioritizing our facilities for our students and our programs first.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Matt?
What's our revenue?
Can you turn your,
I mean, what's our revenue on this? I guess multiple questions on the revenue side. I mean, are we at present collecting any facilities revenue for the elementary?
We are not in elementary or middle school, and high school is dependent on the high school and the program or the space that they're using.
If we were to approve this, when would we start collecting revenue, and how much revenue would we expect?
There's Wait a second. We have
spreadsheets like 25%. Not charging.
Rebecca, can you turn your mic on if you're gonna? I know, but we're recording and
The spreadsheets implied that we would do a soft, slow lead in, that we would charge 25%, I believe, the first year, and that we would slowly ramp up to charging our full thing. And that the suggested revenue for what we currently do would actually cover this position. And I think that's why the two are being talked about at the same time. Is that?
Yeah, so what we did was we ran, and it's, just bear with me, it's a little bit more complicated to explain, but we started collecting, or we look back. So this is a rear view mirror projection. We look back at what groups used our facilities and how many times they used their facilities. And then we also looked at how we categorize groups. So some of that needs to be cleaned up because we were using outdated schedules, plus different groups weren't organized. In a condensed version of that, we were able to look at about 2/3 of a school year, and that's what we were able to capture. So based on 2/3 of a school year, we could have collected about $56,000 from the elementary rentals alone. But Rebecca is correct. I think that us going from,
Are we collecting anything?
we're not collecting anything right now.
Are we collecting anything from the middle school?
No,
Mike, please.
Wait, so those astronomical City League basketball fees we pay, the school's getting none of it?
I'm not sure how much you pay for City League
It's like
basketball.
$800 a team.
But no, the district is not collecting any revenue from,
I mean, it's like $800 a team for City League basketball that occupies our middle school all day Sunday, and I think all day Wednesday nights or something like that.
yes.
And then we have our Rotary basketball and our other basketball leagues, of which I'm a volunteer coach and still pay $30 to $40 for my kid to do. and there's 8 kids on our team and there's 8 teams in 2nd grade. I mean, we're looking at, and we do it for how many weeks? Anyway, the amount of revenue that is coming into these programs that are using our gyms at no cost. And we're taking all the wear and tear in our facilities. We're having to staff and clean up afterwards because I know water bottles get left and things get spilled and people don't remember to leave food and drink out of the gym, right? I mean, I guess my big concern is, why are we doing a slow ramp? I mean, there's plenty of funds in these fees for these programs to say, hey, our policy has always been this. It's always been out there. Here, I mean, it's $25 an hour for a gym rental. I mean, I've got 8 girls at, paying $35 a kid. So 35, I'm just doing quick, I'm bad at math. We know that 35 times 8 just for my team for the entire season, of which we have the gym for six weeks, right? And there's another team, there's 2, $560. We're talking about $150 total at $25 an hour for 6 weeks that we're going to charge in fees. And they're collecting, $560 on us. And that's just one team. And that's not, and we're actually running 2 courts on that. So they're actually collecting $1,200 on us. I think they can afford $150.
Do remember it's also Girl Scouts and several other nonprofits that are not charging. There was a segment in there for groups not charging. It's not just groups that are charging quite large fees that are used. PTOs, there's a lot of groups that use our facilities at night that are not necessarily breaking in cash.
And fair enough, but I mean, I do think we should take a look at who's using our facilities and what they're charging, because I mean, I'm volunteer coaching and there's money there to pay the school. And I feel like I know we want to be a kind community neighbor, but at the same time, if they've been collecting those fees for multiple years without paying the school, and we've had the wear and tear, I don't think, I'm sorry.
No,
Because we have to resurface.
you bring up some really good points. I would say that I would first note that it's worse than us not collecting fees because we're currently paying for all the custodial costs and all the wear and tear and maintenance associated with the use of our facility without collecting fees. But the issue is more complicated in the sense of the fee structure that we have is based on 2008. And so we've used, but what I'm proposing is that we take the old fee structure, we use the CPI index, we update it to what that should be in 2024. And then we implement that fee structure. And then we work with our partners because you may be being charged for your adult basketball league from the city, but the city's also not charging us for the tennis courts that we use as a middle school because they're not being charged for these. So there's going to be some trade. And the Rotary program does collect fees from parents, but the Rotary program is also providing 5th and 6th grade basketball since the district eliminated 5th and 6th grade basketball. So when I sat down with the Rotary Club this summer and talked to them about where I was going with this, they reminded me that they've been covering school district programs because the school district has cut those programs. So there is some give and take. And what we want to do is just be fair and recognizing that there is some give and take and recognizing that some of those fee implementation timelines have passed for those organizations. So if they're going to increase fees, they won't be able to increase it until the next cycle when they already have started some of these. So what I'm recommending is that we create a structure and a process for collecting fees and we get ahead of this issue and not be behind the issue. And we work towards collecting full fees. And the fees are appropriate because they're based on the structure is based on what it takes for us to keep the facilities clean and maintained. We're not generating a profit.
I mean, at $25 an hour, we're paying our custodian to come in and clean it, right? I mean, that's what this $25 is based on. Are we incorporating anywhere in tear the fact we got to resurface our gyms every summer and that cost associated with it because we're running little dribblers and little hoopsters and Rotary and City League and all the various things. I mean, shoot, like camp, volleyball. I mean, I'm thinking of all the things that we're using in our elementary school gyms. Like, I don't know, I guess maybe I'm just saying this, the revenue side of this, from a global perspective of this position, I have a really hard time adding a position and paying for that. If it can be budget neutral or budget positive, I'm more open to that. But I have a hard time saying we'll absorb the cost in year one and it's not budget neutral, but maybe in year two, it is going to be budget neutral, because I think there's an opportunity now. We still have a ton of sports and activities that haven't even come to light. They're going to come in the spring that will be charging fees in the spring. I mean, I just think that's what I'm saying is I'm reluctant to say, everybody gets a pass because we're behind the 8 ball on this. I mean, our fees have been out there for years. We just haven't done a good job of collecting them. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. More of a comment than a question, I would say, Scott. So there you go.
Thank you, Jen. Sue?
Jen, to your comments, to me, those concerns are program concerns. They're not personnel concerns, which is what our action item is today. I have a concern with the revenue because we don't know what it's going to be. I think there's an opportunity for us to pay for this position, but I am very concerned that we are going to be cutting positions this year. And this looks like we're adding an administrative position. We're cutting teachers and staff, building staff, and we're adding admin positions. We are asking everybody in this district to tighten their belts. And I know we've talked about this. And I just, this maybe needs to be done at some point, but I really struggle to support this at this time. I would like us to put in a program for this. I mean, Matt, you're saying, we're using the system back from 2008. Well, let's update. Let's see what we want to do. And maybe this position would look different when we truly look at, what a new system, what a new program will look like. But I'm very concerned about adding a position, an administrative position at this time.
Just to be clear, it's an administrative assistant position, and we're not administering any salaries, any fee schedule now, and we're not administering any. And the proposal is we move forward with this, or we don't use our facilities, because I don't have a staff member to assign this to. This has historically been assigned to a staff position that no longer exists, and it'd be adding a half-time position, and that half-time position would generate revenue for more than a full-time position. But I totally understand the optics, and I do appreciate that. And I think that's the kind of the common ground, and I think it's important to just everybody take a moment to dig into the details on some of these things, because the reality is we are bogged down in negotiations, and we will be reducing at least 35 FTE as part of an overall effort to balance the budget. At the same time, we have regular business and operations to take care of. So we will have in front of you recommendations for other personnel issues, for substitute compensation, areas in our district that we know that we need to take care of to manage the entirety of the district. And those things don't stop because we need to balance our other ratios. We're still going to be held to accreditation standards for administration, and we're still going to be held to, in the specialty areas, accreditation standards, and we still have to do those things. This is a more of a discussion about, do we want to allow continued use of our facilities or not? And if we do we want to change policy and do things differently, or do we want to have a coordinated effort?
Rebecca?
So, I mean, to Jen's point, in the spreadsheets, there was a group called like Class C that makes more than $200 a participant. And I would be for a faster ramp up for that group, if that would make it more palatable. I think that's reasonable. But again, remember what happened last year when they changed our budget formula after we'd already budgeted for the year. You know, we do have to keep that in mind, at least before we sign the contracts, that we, you know, let them know what the fees are. And to Sue's point, that is somewhat an administrative position. That's actually getting too deep into the specifics of how we charge, which really is the administrator's job, not as much ours. To the bigger thing, I don't see this as adding a new, you know, I'm always the first one who's like, no spending money. I don't see this as a new position, as filling a position that has been unfilled for years, you know, to our clear detriment. You know, we do still allow groups into our schools. We do still have the wear and tear, have the letting them in, have the making sure they haven't destroyed the place. I do think we should continue having our schools be used by inside and outside. I mean, this isn't only talking about outside groups. This is also talking about intra-school groups, as I mentioned, PTOs are, you know, on the list. And I think that one of our hugest issues is our relation to our community. And I do feel that having outside groups in the schools, using them for other services is incredibly important to that. So I've always been for more of them. I've always wanted to have adult ed here. I've always wanted to have a welding class at the beautiful ag station. This new place because it's gorgeous. Okay, I just want to take the class. But I also feel that those are in our best interest. I feel that when we have people use our schools, work with our school districts, we're getting some sort of better feelings towards the school and the district, which is what helps us pass levies eventually. I think that this is actually incredibly important that we do continue. And I totally hear that our administration is maxed out and that this is an appropriate thing to have be somebody's job, and that there is nobody at the moment that's an appropriate job for. And I do, even though I said I agree with Sue that this is perhaps in the weeds and perhaps not our job, I do want to make sure that if and when we do hire such a person, we do put in a program of how to let people rent our schools. When we looked at the other district schools, they were very careful about saying, this is student group, this is adults who support student group, this is totally outside group, but still for our students, or for all students, including our students. I think we need to be a little more cautious and careful about how we tease out those groups. But that again, really is the administrators, not particularly our jobs. I just want to put our 2 cents in of saying, be aware of, because you know, the laws changed last year, and I've always been concerned about this. The talk about we have to allow student-led groups where teachers aren't even allowed to oversee them, and that is a whole different group. And I'm not sure if we've ever heard about how that's working out or if it's working out, but we do need a janitor there to let them in and clean up. We do need to make sure that nobody's carving initials into each other like some swim team did at some college. Yeah, so again, what kind of oversight we have in these buildings, but sorry, that was one with.
I'll just say I appreciate the comment about the categories. We've found that there are other places that do that better. And what we do is try to make it clear on the categories. It's confusing for us and it's confusing for the people trying to use our facilities to see which category they fit in. And so a clearer definition of the boundaries of those categories. And then I think it's easier to enforce a higher fee to category 2 and 3 folks when it's really clear that they know where they fit and we know where they fit.
I just wanted to say really quick, as somebody that's rented facilities as a nonprofit for like trainings and things that are free for participants, we've been in that lower group. We haven't had to pay anything, but I mean, it is like the last year we did it in April of last year. And it was just it was confusing, the whole structure, and like kind of like, who do I get a hold of? And then there's just a Google form and you kind of fill that out and then you show up and then the doors didn't open. So then we had to try to get a hold of the principal, and it was just kind of, so having somebody in that position to kind of organize all of that and keep it all straight, I think is really important, because I mean, the last thing you want is some group coming and then doors aren't opening, and then having a principal have to come in on like a Saturday to open the doors because somebody wasn't there. So I do think this is an important position, and I do hear you, Jared, about teachers and not wanting more admin, but if it keeps everything going smoothly, that's also really important.
The title of this position might be a bit misleading as far as we keep calling it an administrative position. I just want a point of clarification. This is a classified union position that is already in the CPA. So while it's a new FTE, that's because the halftime was removed, but it is a classified union position, not a non-union administrative position.
Thank you, Liz. Jen?
So I guess when I was looking at these numbers as they were sent out to us, it seems as though it's projected to be budget neutral in year 2.
No, just based on elementary rental use for 2/3 of the day, we will more than pay the cost of the entire position. We are proposing in year 2, taking over the scheduling with the middle school. It may be by the end of this year, depending on when we can fill the position. And then after that, the high school. And so this is one of those positions that'll generate much more revenue than the cost of the classified position. But remember, we base these fee structures on the actual cost of renting our facilities. So that ideally we cover the cost of the custodians that are coming in to clean the space. We offset the wear and tear. We're paying for the position, but we're also paying for all of the cards if we're doing key card system. So we're not, our intent is not to make money as a district off our facility rentals, but we definitely can't be in a position where we're continuing to lose money, which is where we are now.
Can we make money off of our facility rent?
Yes. Yes, we could.
We can make money.
Yes.
off of
And
our
I think when you
facility
start, and I think it's when we start talking about how we make money,
Yeah.
and this comes up with the middle school and high school, their current structures, if they're renting out a space, they're using the money that comes in from the revenue of renting those spaces to do things like pay for the tuning of the piano, or to buy a new curtain for the stage, or to replace some tech equipment somewhere. Those are costs that if we're not bringing in revenue from rentals, we're pulling from the general fund to pay for those things. So yes, we are making money, but we're making money to pay for the things that are needed or to enhance those spaces. It's not going to be the spot where we look to offset our budget deficits because of our fees.
These city league teams, I mean, we can, I don't know what the city's doing with all that, except for paying refs who take a beating every week when the teams are, fighting with each other and whatnot. But I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I would just encourage us that the hesitation I have is, adding, and granted, this is a position that was unfilled. And I know we've been doing passive riffs for unfilled positions. I recognize this position has the ability to create revenue to offset the cost of this position and help assist with other maintenance and type things associated with our facilities. So, with it being budget neutral or budget positive, I'm more in favor of adding something or doing this. But I just think, I guess, and to Rebecca's point, I get it. I'm in the weeds and this is programmatic and we need to get the person in place so they can start looking at this stuff. But I mean, if we have an asset that we're not capitalizing on, I think that's something we should look at.
I totally agree. And I think there's a lot of funds on the table to do a lot of different things, and that's yet to be determined on what we do with those funds. I'd say the first place we look at is taking care of the facilities that are being used. But I do want to comment on the history of this position. This position was never intended to be a position that is a passive riff. The timing of when the funding was connected to transportation for the entirety was when Superintendent Hill was leaving the district. And so the position was tabled for the next superintendent. I picked it up this summer and started working on collecting the information. And at that time, when I looked at it, I said, we at least need to be collecting the insurance and the right paperwork for facility use, and then collect information to be able to bring it to the board. It's October, and I'm bringing it to you now for direction for the remainder of the year. And then the progress update would be all of the finer points that you've mentioned of how do we transition? How does this shape policy? How do we update policy? What does the classifications look like? There's a lot of details in facility use. But the main tenets are, we want to take care of our spaces. We want to make sure we have safe and secure environments. We want to take care of our people, take care of our expenditures with the cleaning and maintenance. And then our staff that reoccupy these spaces after they've been rented out deserve to be able to come into a clean space. So this is my recommendation to move this forward. But there's lots of details that we'll still have to address, like updating policies, updating scheduling for rental fees, those types of discussions.
Well,
So when I was reading through it, I got to wondering about monitoring usage. I couldn't tell if monitoring usage was part of this person's duties. And if these spaces get opened up early in the morning before school starts and stays open until late at night, what kind of hours are we talking about for this person?
Good question. No, this person would be responsible for signing out to scheduling the space, and then we would switch to a key card system like we have with employees. So the space wouldn't just open up in the morning. They would have a key that worked. There's different ways that we've talked about doing that. It can be like a 10-minute before and 10-minute after, and then their key is disabled. And then it only works during those times, but it also shuts off when they're done with the dates of the facility. So they don't have an open card. If they bring the card back, they can get a deposit back. If they don't bring the card back, then they lose their deposit on the key card. But right now, how we schedule it is we just open a door and we just program the door to be open. And so whether or not that person shows up or not, the door is opened because we don't have somebody to do the key card system. Yeah, good question.
yeah, go ahead.
I would like to make a motion as presented. Anyone, get a second?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Will. Any further discussion amongst the board?
You know, my one last comment is I'm really reluctant to support a position when we cut positions that have direct contact with our students, which is why we are here, for something to, manage facilities, which I know is important, okay? But our purpose is for the students, and I really struggle to make that leap. So just wanted to say that. I think the timing is wrong on this one.
Thank you, Sue. Any further discussion? Any public comment? Yeah.
So I know the timing is not exactly right with how we're doing this, but I want to just kind of reiterate that being part of this whole process of Regan and Matt and everybody, and I get called at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning, the building's not open. I got to run over there, open it up. I got Peterson rank and all this stuff. And then you have literally hundreds and hundreds of kids that go to our schools and maybe in the surrounding areas and all that. They come to these programs, Park and Rec, Rotary, all this stuff, and we support them, and we really want to support them and want to be, good stewards of the community and want to be partners with them. And when I first got here, we sat down with City Park and Rec, County Parks, the Rotary and stuff. And, when first started, they're like, well, we need several facilities at various times. And I'm like, well, that really doesn't work for us. I mean, give us some dates, so we sat down and we hammered out. I said, give me 2 years. You guys know what your schedule is going to be. Give us 2 years. That's when Lori was here. And we still struggle with that, but we wanted the insurance certs, the waivers from each participant, all that stuff that we had to come in, and we had to do all this and keep it on file and do all this. And then we started talking about, well, it's costing us thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in man hours. wear and tear on the buildings and all this stuff. And we kind of looked at the fee structure, and then when that came aboard and Regan got involved and all this stuff, and we started looking at this, and we're just like, it's not so much about, for me, it's not so much about the revenue stream as it is about our accountability to these user groups, that we can support them with some clear direction and how we're going to do this. Yes, hopefully we can pay for this position out of that revenue stream, but we can also have clarity when it comes to who uses our facilities, when they use our facilities, how they use our facilities, who's going to maintain those. When you have custodians come in on a Monday morning and the place is trashed, and they're trying to get ready for, our kids coming into school, but they got to spend 3 hours cleaning up the gym and the bathrooms and wherever else, the trail leads, and they have to do that. So I think for us to have control, accountability, and some form of a central hub of where this information comes from and how we contain this into our facilities, I don't know, we could go along, but it's like if you redo a gym floor, it's $80,000, right? To sand the floor down and do all that. That's just with our kids using it. Now put 10,000 other kids in there over the course of X, I'm not saying 10,000, I mean, you know what I'm saying? So I just feel like for us, we're not trying to hold people so much accountable. We're just trying to maintain our facilities to make sure it's safe, make sure that it's presentable, and make sure that we do what we're supposed to do as stewards of our buildings. And we need to make sure that our students and our staff have a building and a gym or whatever that may be, whether it's a pack room, whether it's a auditorium or whatever. We still have to maintain that. And for us to present that to the public and have the funds to do that, I'm telling you right now, as the facilities director, no. And this position is a little bit more in depth than just collecting fees, right? This is something about scheduling. This is something about that's going to help on the facility side. This is something that's going to help on the communication side. That's going to go out to the public. And if you have a question about, what gym is available and what auditorium is available, and can I use the Commons at Flathead on Thursday at 4:00 in the afternoon for a Bible study or something? I mean, can we do that? It's not just about using our gyms. This is about Kalispell Public Schools controlling what we do, but yet being available to the community. And we want to be good partners, neighbors to all these community members that want to use our facilities. We use TED Sports. We use Kids Sport. We made a deal with Kids Sport guys. We don't have to paint soccer fields anymore. They're doing it. We just provide the paint. That's a great win-win for all of us. So I know I'm running out of time. I just want you guys to know this is much bigger than just collecting fees and a position. I'm 1,000% in support of this position. I think if we don't do this, we're taking a step back. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Rebecca.
And don't forget the legal ramifications. Some of these groups have religious affiliations, and we can't show signed contracts that say we are treating the religious groups exactly the same as we are treating other groups. We can get really serious legal trouble, but we need to be able to show that we are being as fair and not more fair to religious groups as we are to all other groups that we allow to use our facilities, because it's a big deal.
I think.
Well, can you turn your mic on?
Never mind. I just noticed that the light was on, and so we were hearing Rebecca as well.
Oh.
But when you hit yours, that went off.
Any other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving the facility administrative assistant, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I
Thank you. Sherry, did you get all those? Next on the agenda is the negotiations update. Matt, are you taking that?
Liz and I'll take team it, but Liz will kick it off. And
All right, so this is just an updated presentation we've already presented. We do have, can you click on that? EA overview. So all of our items brought to the table by both sides have been tentatively agreed on with the exception of the matrix revaluation and nurse pay. So we did the update from the last time you probably saw this is discretionary leave was TA 2 sessions ago. This document has also been updated to show you on the far left then which group brought these to the table. So I think that was an important piece for you to see, and then who's went through and who's have been or are now dead proposals. If you could go back. So the remaining piece then is our pay and our matrices. This slide you've seen. So this is last year or last spring. This spring and school years in my head. And if you go to slide 5, Pete. So then here we are in the fall of 2024. So we did bring a counter proposal back. It was a 2-year agreement. And then Katie countered again. Matt, if you want to go through this in depth, I think that would be good. And our last counter was on the 9th of October with a 1 year. So we did drop from 2 years to a 1 year agreement. We were supposed to meet yesterday, and that has been tabled until next Wednesday is our next meeting in this very room.
yeah, thanks, Liz. I think you covered all the main points. I'd just add that I am going to call for a finance committee meeting to review what the last proposals have included. A quick trip down memory lane. Finance committee met. Finance committee made a recommendation for splitting a difference between a couple proposals ago. Negotiations committee took a little bit of liberty and added to what the finance committee had noted as the range. That offer was rejected. And so after we receive the proposal or a counter, let's see, next week, we'll convene a finance meeting, review the financial implications of whatever that proposal entails, and then move that to a negotiations committee so they can take a look at what the next options are.
What questions do you guys have for administration and or the negotiations committee in reference to this?
So the last bit then is our timeline for you. We have updated this just this morning, and something to note is in December, we had originally talked about making our reduction announcements. That would be a tentative letter to those who might be RIFT. We've actually pushed that back to January or February. And just the timing of that. There's more to come at the finance meeting that will also help clear up that picture, and we'll bring that back to the full board at the next meeting after that finance committee. But that's the number one thing to note. But still hoping to settle in October, November.
Anything else?
Right.
Right, Rebecca, you have a question?
Just to Liz, so we want to make sure, of course, that if we do end up with RIFs, that they are in time for the teachers to find other positions. Is January, February still fair to our teachers? So it's not a good time of year.
Yeah, so a good job hunting season is usually right before and right during and after spring break. So most open up, some open up in February. March is the big job hunting season, but we also have plans to come up with plans for, if then scenarios. So these wouldn't be their actual RIF notices. This is just kind of a foreshadowing in case the levy does not pass. This is what would happen. You may or may not be on this RIF list, etc. But we want to notify people as early as possible. And if they want to wait until after levy and that is decided upon, then we could do that. If not, they would at least have notification of intentions and plans.
So that, Rebecca, if you look at that process, the process really is, and we're still hopeful that we'll find a settlement in November. And then right after that, once we know what we've settled on, we'll know the staffing implications for that. That really sets a process in place of identifying the positions, not the people, the positions that are going to be reduced. And then from there, there's a series of things of unknowns, right? We still have legislative actions that could change the budget forecast. We still have our second A and B count that could change budget projections. And then the big one is the levy on the high school side that would change the high school reductions. So you're establishing in November and December administratively the positions that are going to be reduced and then the order of callback. And the positions is intricate, I'd say, because you're looking at certifications. And if you're reducing positions, let's say in a certain department, you're looking at the certifications that are maybe a 512 endorsement for that department or for that position. And then when we move towards that being solidified with the final budget, that's when we'd be issuing the notices to the staff. And then the final RIF notice would be like the final letter that says after all the callbacks, after all the positions or unexpected resignations or retirements or things like that, would be the official ones, and that'd be in May. But we don't want to wait until May to communicate with staff that their position is one of the positions that's been identified as a reduction.
Any other questions, comments for Edmund? Okay. Jared, do you have anything for public comment on this? Okay.
Other than I hope we settle.
As do we. Next up on the agenda is and Matt and Liz, thank you for that update on that. This is a really important thing for the board to hear, and I think the more we bring this to the board, hopefully it gives the negotiation team a little more direction on where we need to go to get this settled and make it palatable for both the district and the teachers. So thank you for that. Next up is the A&B finance update. Chris, are you taking this? Your name's on it, but
Do you have a sure. Okay. Roll up just a tiny bit. So high school, the high school numbers just came in today right around like 4 o'clock. So I don't have a whole ton of high school information for you just because the charters threw a massive wrench into the normal processes, and we'll just need some time to go through that and make sure that we're giving you good information as opposed to not good information. So, however, looking back, this is the elementary district, and I just put together kind of like a 10-year look back. K6 is how OPI looks at one band of enrollment, 7-8 is the next band, and then 9-12 is the third one. So under each year there in the top row, the green row for K6, you can see that over the last 10 years, we've seen enrollments increase by only about 63 students over a 10-year window. The second row kind of shows you the change from one year to the next. The reason we I went into more detail this year than last is as we're looking at reducing staffing, I wanted to get a real clear picture over the last 10 years of have we had any massive shifts in enrollment. So if you're reducing staff, we're going to have like an unexpected increase in enrollment where we are now shorthanded and need to react quite quickly. And across that K6 window other than the COVID years of 2020, 2021, where you have a decrease of 151 year and an increase of 201 the next year. After chatting with Sarah today, I think those are kind of manageable fluctuations from one year to the next. That wouldn't put us in like an FTE crisis. So that's kind of the K-5 picture. The 7-8, we've actually seen only about an increase of 6 students over the last 10 years. Just kind of really surprising with how much the valley has grown. But looking there, no real massive shifts in volatility that would, potentially put us in a really tough spot with being short on instructional FTE or the opposite situation. Down to the very bottom, I'll just skip right to there. The kind of 3 scenarios that I'm modeling out is if our current fall count holds steady, we'll see our general fund revenue increase by about $450,000. That's the very first scenario one there. If we see our enrollment increase between the standard deviation, so the kind of average volatility between our fall count and our spring count, if that's a positive swing, we'd see another $60,000 or $70,000 will come in, so $590,000. If it decreases, we'll see about $405,000 of increased revenue. So those increases are net decreases to our A and B funding and put us shy of covering steps and lanes for the 26 fiscal year. So that's the summary there. On the high school side, we have one issue that we're trying to work through, get our head around right now, and that is that our high school is looking, because of declining enrollment, at using the 3-year average for our student count. The problem we're noticing is that our charter schools, because they do not have 3 years of history, are having 2/3 of their A and B count stripped out. So, St. Gordon, we need you to do everything you can to get Lions Melon to drive this right for us. I'm saying, actually, not kidding at all. It really equates to a projected increase currently of $456,000. Now, these are preliminary because we just got that data today. But with the current formula and getting 1/3 of our charter A and B, we'd see about $456,000 of revenue increase versus not quite 1.1 million if we got full credit for all of our charter A and B. So the MCA seems clear to me. Lance thinks it's a little more maybe vague or ambiguous after he replied to an email Matt sent. But it's something we want to, I think, look into because it has meaningful impact. And that's not all, unless there's any questions.
Chris, can you just give us a reminder of where those numbers, those A and B numbers fall with the projections we had made for budget impacts previously? So when we were forecasting budgets for next year in the allocation we had for A and B.
Yeah, so it probably impacts, and high school's preliminary. I'm going to say it brings us in the range of about $300,000, probably worse than forecast as far as covering the cost of steps and lanes for the next year. That said, until we have our RIF positions kind of finalized, the cost of all those steps is still a little, it's just approximate for now, I guess. That's it. But yeah.
Any questions for Chris or Matt? Go ahead.
Actually, I think this is more for Matt because Chris doesn't have the experience. I'm very confused at seeing that our A and B is remarkably steady over a 10-year period. Because I feel like when we do our tours the middle school, when we do our tours the elementary school, we're like, we have 20 more students, we have 50 extra students show up. Is this because some of those students are in different situations, like adding K or pre-K, or I don't, this isn't making sense to me. Can you make sense of that?
Actually, I'm just waiting for Jack to give out an "I told you so." When we started the long range facility planning process, we were looking at historical numbers, and these numbers totally align with the historical numbers and what we were what was being forecast through the long range facility study was also the pretty rapid growth in our community, but we still hadn't seen, and we haven't seen the growth in our elementary district and how that's impacting our elementary students. So although the valley, the Flathead Valley, the Kalispell area might be experiencing growth, we're not seeing that translate into the number of students in our schools. And so when that process stalled out, if you guys remember, it didn't really stall out. We just completed the process, and we said we're going to wait for actual student enrollment numbers to drive decisions related to facilities. But as far as like the narrative in schools, I think we've heard that at different grade levels, and we have had like some bubbles, so to speak, in different grade levels where sixth grade class has been big, and then the seventh grade team has said, "Oh, we got a big group this year. We got 20 more kids." More reflective of a group of kids moving through the system than when you take sixth, seventh, and eighth graders together and how that's impacting the middle school. What we're on the elementary specifically, what I've noticed since I've been in the district is we're seeing a shift in neighborhood schools and the number of students in those neighborhood schools. So in some of our schools, we're seeing a decrease in enrollment. The Hedges neighborhood has, since I've been here, I've seen a decrease in student enrollment for that neighborhood. And then we've seen an increase in other neighborhoods. Obviously, the Edgerton is a big land mass, and same with Rankin. And we've seen growing student populations in those areas. And then the smaller, more city confined neighborhood districts have seen a, generally speaking, a decrease. And we're moving towards like partner districts to where we're sharing enrollment between Rankin and Hedges, for example. And so if we're moving families, we're moving them in the least geographical hardship, closest geographical school, to balance some of those trends that we're seeing there. I don't know if Sarah wants to comment any more about any of that.
No, I think you covered it. I think for teachers at individual grade levels, because of those bubbles, their numbers may have increased, and it feels like a lot. But overall, as Chris's data suggests, it's not. Overall, our numbers are increasing. A while I can feel that way at grade levels.
Matt, where are we at on potentially getting sixth grade added into the high school numbers, since we can get more A and B funds for them?
Yeah, a good plug for legislative issues for us to just start to lean into. My sense is, and I welcome Sue's opinion from the MCEL conference last week, or anybody else who was able to join online, is that this is going to be a legislative session where it's going to be a little bit more subdued in the requests from MTSBA or the education community, more of a wait and see from the decennial survey and see what happens from there, maybe potential litigation after that to see if there's adequate funding for schools. But one of the things that's on the table, I think, that could be impactful for all of us, meaning regardless of the size of your school across the state of Montana, is funding sixth graders at the middle school and high school rate. I've made the recommendation that it should actually be fifth, sixth graders, because fifth grade is when the accreditation goes to 30, and 30 is the number for students per teacher ratio that is driven at the high school level. And so if we're using accreditation standards, it should be a fifth and sixth grade adjustment to that higher ratio. My further recommendation is that it's crazy that our elementary students are funded at a lower level anyway. When you think about the funding mechanism where the accreditation is 20 students per teacher, and there's less funding per student than when accreditation is 30 students per teacher and there's more funding for the 30. Like it doesn't make any sense. I think it represents a very outdated model for how funding is associated with students and what types of services are expected for that funding. But the short answer is there's probably a lane to run in for advocacy for sixth grade to be funded at the high school rate. And that's something that this legislative session could potentially take on.
Can I add to that?
Yes, you can.
That is definitely something that is on our to-do list for this legislative session. And I was just talking to somebody, stay tuned because I'm going to put on a local advocacy workshop. We did one at Amstel and we had standing room only, although Matt had to sit on the floor for it. But people are really interested in advocating for education this legislative session. And it is, it's going to be a slow process because we're asking for a few things this session, but a lot of the legislators are saying, let's wait till the decennial study to do the big things. But we're going to start chipping away at it this time. And we need all hands on deck for the advocacy. There's some new software available to school trustees that will make it easier to testify remotely, to contact your legislators. We're pretty fortunate that we have some very supportive legislators locally, and I think we're gonna start meeting with them in kind of a new format, but I think we're gonna get more involved with them. But if you know your legislators, and some of them will be new this time around, but we need to get to know our legislators. They need to get to know our names. So when our names pop up as advocacy, they pay attention to it. I'm very interested, Chris, we're going to talk more about this A and B. I'm a little perplexed why we only get 1/3 for the charter school kids. But yeah, we're going to meet everybody here and I'm, going to get people together, and Cody left, but hopefully we can rein Cody in and Jared too. Because we need to have a strong unified voice this time around. But yeah, 6th grade, we're doing away with the decrement.
Thank you, Sue. Appreciate it. Does anyone have any other questions, comments? All right. Seeing none, moving on to the elementary only consent agenda. We have
I
anyone?
move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Jen, for the second. Any discussion? All right. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, and that was elementary only, so thank you. Next up is district-wide consent agenda. Anyone willing to make a motion? Thank you, Jen. We have a second. Thank you, Jennifer.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just want to point out on the out-of-state travel, where it says Glacier High School out-of-state field trip Moab, that's actually Flathead High School if you take a look at the request. So
Yeah,
just want to note that.
Thank you, Pete. So that he's talking D1, if you guys are looking at that. So with that correction, any other comments, questions? With that correction, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we have a list of upcoming meetings?
This is the first one listed in November, but those 2 meetings in November.
Okay. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Sue, for the motion. Thank you, Rebecca, for the second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.